in memory of Pope Francis, a life fully dedicated to God and humanity. Pope Francis, with his heart full of love and unwavering dedication, devoted his entire life to serving God and humanity. He was not only the spiritual leader of millions of Catholics around the world, but also an exemplary figure of compassion, sacrifice, and steadfast faith. Today, as we remember Pope Francis, we reflect not only on his monumental achievements in religious work, but also on the model he set for humility, service, and love for all people, regardless of who they are. Pope Francis, born Jorge Mario Bergoglio on December 17, 1936, in Buenos Aires, Argentina, was destined to serve God from a young age. From his earliest years, he felt a profound sense of calling, a deep connection to the values of faith, love and service that would shape not only his life but the lives of countless others. The journey of this remarkable man began in a simple home in Buenos Aires, where he learned the importance of humility, compassion, and empathy, values that would define his papacy and his lifelong mission to serve the most vulnerable members of society. Growing up in a family that valued faith and community, young Jorge Mario Bergoglio was drawn to the idea of living a life dedicated to God. As a child, he witnessed firsthand the challenges faced by those who were less fortunate, and it was these experiences that ignited in him a passion for service. It was clear from an early age that he was meant to lead a life of profound spiritual commitment. His faith became the compass, guiding him through all the decisions and challenges that would come his way. In 1958, Bergoglio's path to the priesthood began when he joined the Society of Jesus, also known as the Jesuits. This was not merely a religious decision, but a profound commitment to live a life fully devoted to God and to the service of others. The Jesuit order, known for its intellectual rigor and missionary zeal, provided him the space to deepen his theological education and spiritual understanding. For Bergoglio, this was not just about personal religious growth, but about being equipped to serve humanity in the most meaningful way possible. He became known for his exceptional humility and dedication to his faith, rising above the many challenges that accompanied his religious vocation. Pope Francis's ordination as a priest in 1969 was a pivotal moment in his life, marking the beginning of a journey that would span decades of selfless service to God and mankind. He embraced the priesthood not as a position of power, but as a life of service fully devoted to the teachings of Christ and the well-being of all people, especially the most marginalized. He did not seek fame or recognition, but rather strove to live the life of a humble servant, echoing Christ's words. "I am among you as one who serves," Luke 22:27. As a young priest, Father Bergoglio worked tirelessly in various capacities, from serving in parishes to teaching in Jesuit schools. His role in these institutions was not just to impart religious knowledge, but to cultivate a deep understanding of human dignity, justice, and mercy. His educational approach was rooted in his belief that faith must be active and lived out in service to others. Throughout his years as a priest and later as a bishop, he never forgot his first love: the poor, the oppressed, and those on the margins of society. It was through his direct and personal involvement with the poor and marginalized that Bergoglio truly began to demonstrate the depth of his commitment to service. His ministry was not confined to the walls of churches or cathedrals, but extended to the streets, to the hospitals, to the slums where people were suffering. He did not merely teach about social justice, he lived it. He listened to the stories of the homeless, the sick, and the outcasts, offering them not only his prayers but also his presence. Pope Francis was never content to lead from afar. He was always present in the trenches, in the places where suffering was most acute. His life was an embodiment of his words. "A faith that does not result in a better life for others is a faith that has been wasted." In his role as Archbishop of Buenos Aires, Bergoglio continued to show a special affection for the poor and the downtrodden. He worked tirelessly to address the social injustices that plagued Argentina, always advocating for those whose voices were too often silenced by the powerful. His leadership was not about self-promotion, but about speaking truth to power and standing up for those who had no one else to defend them. His deep compassion for the poor was not limited to charity, but extended to the creation of lasting social change. He continually reminded his followers that the Church's mission was to serve, not to be served. Pope Francis's life was also marked by a deep commitment to interfaith dialogue. He understood that the path to peace was not through division, but through understanding and cooperation. He sought to build bridges between religions and foster unity in a world increasingly divided by ideological and religious conflicts. His commitment to dialogue with people of all faiths and backgrounds was rooted in his belief that all human beings are created in the image of God and deserve respect, dignity, and love. This vision of a more united world was evident throughout his papacy, where he consistently sought to bring people together rather than allowing them to be divided by their differences. In 2013, Jorge Mario Bergoglio was elected as Pope, taking the name Francis in honor of St. Francis of Assisi, a man who lived a life of poverty, humility, and service. From the moment of his election, Pope Francis made it clear that his papacy would be characterized by simplicity, humility, and a focus on the pastoral care of the faithful. He chose to live in the Vatican guest house, rather than the luxurious papal apartments, a decision that symbolized his desire to live like Christ among the people, not above them. His lifestyle was a reflection of his unwavering belief that the Church should serve the poor and the marginalized, and that the love of God should be shown through concrete acts of compassion. Pope Francis's papacy was a continuation of his lifelong commitment to serving God through service to others. He redefined what it means to be a leader in the Church, emphasizing that true leadership is found in serving, not in power. He led by example, constantly reminding us that the mission of the Church is not to judge or condemn, but to bring God's love to all people, especially the poor, the oppressed, and those who are suffering. His tireless efforts to address the issues of climate change, poverty, inequality, and war were grounded in his deeply held belief that the Church must be a force for good in the world, a light that illuminates the path of justice and peace. As we reflect on the life of Pope Francis, we remember a man who gave everything for God and for humanity. His life was one of total dedication, never seeking personal gain, but always striving to be a servant. To all, his unwavering commitment to the poor, the oppressed, and the vulnerable is a legacy that will continue to inspire generations to come. Pope Francis showed us that true greatness is found in humility, that true power is found in service, and that true love is shown in action. Today, as we mourn the loss of this remarkable man, we also celebrate his life. We give thanks for his example, for his unwavering faith, and for his dedication to God and to all people. Pope Francis's life will forever be a testament to the power of love, humility, and service. His memory will continue to guide us as we strive to live lives of faith, hope, and compassion, following in the footsteps of a man who dedicated his life to serving God and humanity. Humility and love for the poor. One of the most remarkable and enduring features of Pope Francis's life and papacy was his profound humility and tireless devotion to the poor. In a world often defined by status, wealth, and power, Pope Francis stood as a living testament to the Christian call to serve, not to be served. From the beginning of his papacy in 2013, he set a striking example by choosing to live, simply forsaking the opulence of the papal residence for a modest room in the Vatican guest house. This deliberate choice was not just a symbolic gesture, but a reflection of his deep commitment to live the teachings of Christ in their most fundamental form. Pope Francis's life was a constant reminder that true faith is not about what is seen or adorned on the outside, but about how one lives in accordance with the teachings of love, service, and humility. Pope Francis's relationship with the poor was not something he did out of duty or obligation. It was central to his very identity as a servant of Christ. His passion for addressing the needs of the poor and marginalized was not only theoretical, but intensely practical. The Pope's deep belief in social justice and care for the downtrodden was rooted in his understanding that the gospel calls all Christians to be agents of change for those most in need. He understood that Christ himself lived among the poor, healed the sick, and broke bread with the outcasts of society. Therefore, the Church, in Pope Francis's view, must always be a beacon of hope for those who have been neglected and oppressed, rather than an institution focused only on self-preservation or ritual. In choosing to live a simple life, Pope Francis sent a powerful message to the world. The pursuit of wealth and comfort should never overshadow the responsibility to care for those who are suffering. The decision to forgo the luxuries afforded to the Pope and instead live humbly was not a publicity stunt, but a reflection of the values he held most dear. By living simply, Pope Francis showed the world that leadership does not require a life of excess, but a life marked by the humility of Christ. His actions embodied the very essence of what it means to lead by example, leading not from a position of power or privilege, but through self-sacrifice, compassion, and a willingness to walk alongside the poor and suffering. Throughout his papacy, Pope Francis frequently reminded us that true faith is not about the rituals we perform or the words we say, but about the actions we take to alleviate suffering and promote justice. Faith in his eyes was a living force, a call to serve the most vulnerable and to challenge the systems that perpetuate poverty and inequality. Pope Francis was outspoken in his criticism of social and economic systems that marginalize the poor and vulnerable. He condemned the culture of indifference that sees the poor as a mere statistic, rather than as individuals deserving of dignity and respect. He decried the greed and selfishness that create a world where millions go hungry, while others accumulate wealth and excess. His stance on poverty and social justice was not confined to occasional speeches or theological discussions. It was a driving force behind his papacy. Pope Francis insisted that the Church must not only be a place of spiritual nourishment, but also a place of action. The Church must, he argued, actively work to uplift the marginalized and fight against systems of oppression and inequality. In his famous apostolic exhortation, Evangelii Gaudium, Pope Francis wrote, "We cannot rest easy while millions of people are excluded from the benefits of economic, social, and cultural life." For him, the gospel was not just about salvation for the soul, but about transforming the world into a place of justice, peace, and love. The Pope's focus on the poor extended beyond material poverty. He sought to address the spiritual poverty that often accompanies societal neglect. In his visits to slums, prisons, and refugee camps, he encountered not just the physical suffering of the poor, but their emotional and spiritual despair as well. Pope Francis was deeply moved by the lack of hope and meaning in the lives of those who had been abandoned by society. But he also understood that in these same communities, the Church could offer a source of light and hope, a reminder that every human being, no matter their circumstances, is worthy of love, respect, and dignity. The Pope's commitment to the poor was evident in his tireless advocacy for refugees and migrants. He called on the world to open its doors to those fleeing war, persecution, and poverty, urging nations to show mercy and compassion. In his public statements, he condemned the treatment of migrants as disposable and reminded us that they are children of God, deserving of the same care and compassion that we would offer to any other member of the human family. His commitment to refugees was not just a moral stance, but a call for systemic change, a call for governments, churches, and individuals to work together to create a world where no one is left behind. Through his outreach to the poor and his efforts to address social injustice, Pope Francis also encouraged others to follow his example. He did not want to be seen as the only one who cared for the poor. Rather, he wanted every person, particularly those of faith, to take up the mantle of service. He inspired countless individuals, families, and communities to engage in acts of charity and social justice. His call was clear. Our faith must move us to act, to build a world where the needs of the poor are met with the same urgency and commitment as our own. In many ways, Pope Francis's life was a radical departure from the traditional image of the Pope as a distant, authoritative figure. He sought to break down the walls that separated the Church from the world, particularly the poor and marginalized. His papacy was marked by a spirit of inclusion, compassion, and service values that were at the heart of Jesus' ministry. Pope Francis consistently reminded the Church and the world that the poor are not just to be helped when convenient, but should be at the center of the Church's mission. Pope Francis's love for the poor was not a passing sentiment, but a lifelong commitment. He dedicated his papacy to addressing issues of inequality, injustice, and poverty, and he called upon all of us to do the same. He lived his life in accordance with the values he preached, exemplifying the belief that a true Christian life is one of humility, service, and sacrifice. Through his example, Pope Francis showed us that a life well lived is not measured by wealth or status, but by the love we show to others, especially the poor and marginalized. As we reflect on Pope Francis's legacy, we are reminded of the profound impact that one person can have when they dedicate themselves to serving others. His life was a testament to the power of humility and love for the poor, and his example will continue to inspire generations to come. His papacy was not only about leading the Church, but also about leading by example, showing the world that faith is best expressed through service to others, particularly those in need. Pope Francis leaves behind a legacy of love, compassion, and unwavering dedication to justice. A legacy that will live on in the hearts and actions of all those who continue his work. Pope Francis possessed a truly global vision that went far beyond the confines of the Church. He viewed the world in its entirety, addressing not only the spiritual and religious concerns of humanity, but also the urgent issues of the environment, peace, and interfaith dialogue. His leadership was not confined to the traditional boundaries of religious teachings, but extended to the entire fabric of human existence. He saw every issue from climate change to human rights as intrinsically connected to the teachings of Christ and the mission of the Church to serve humanity. One of Pope Francis's most significant contributions to global discourse was his passionate advocacy for environmental protection. In 2015, he released Laudato Si', an encyclical that called for urgent and decisive action to combat the environmental crises facing our planet. Through this landmark document, he underscored the moral responsibility humanity has to care for the Earth. He urged people to recognize the intrinsic relationship between their lives and the planet that sustains them. Pope Francis eloquently stated that the Earth, our home, is beginning to look more and more like an immense pile of filth, highlighting the destructive effect of human activity on the natural world. For him, the devastation of the environment was not just an ecological issue, but a deeply spiritual one. He reminded us that the Earth is God's creation, and as stewards of the planet, it is our sacred duty to protect it. His environmental message was not merely theoretical or academic, but a call to action. He implored governments, businesses, and individuals to adopt more sustainable practices, reduce consumption, and take responsibility for the environmental damage caused by past generations. His call was not just to the Catholic faithful, but to people of all faiths, and to every person on earth to come together and work for the common good of future generations. Pope Francis understood that the consequences of ignoring environmental degradation would be disastrous, not only for us, but for generations to come. His message was clear: if we do not protect the Earth, the very foundation of life itself will be at risk. Alongside his advocacy for the environment, Pope Francis was a tireless proponent of peace and reconciliation. He saw peace as a fundamental principle of the Christian faith, and this belief was reflected in his constant calls for dialogue and unity across nations, cultures, and religions. Pope Francis understood that the world is marked by conflict, division, and war, but he also believed that peace was not a mere ideal, but a concrete possibility if we chose to build bridges rather than walls. He worked tirelessly to promote peaceful solutions to global conflicts, urging political leaders to embrace dialogue over violence, diplomacy over warfare. Pope Francis was committed to fostering understanding between different cultures and religions. He frequently emphasized that peace can only be achieved through mutual respect and compassion. He believed that no one faith, culture, or ideology has the sole claim to truth, and that true peace comes when humanity learns to live in harmony, recognizing our shared dignity and common humanity. Throughout his papacy, Pope Francis met with religious leaders from around the world, including Muslims, Jews, and Orthodox Christians, emphasizing that interfaith dialogue is essential to breaking down barriers and building peace. His outreach to the Muslim world in particular was a powerful testament to his belief in religious tolerance and mutual understanding. Pope Francis's vision was always global in scope, And his call for peace was not limited to merely addressing conflicts between countries, but extended to the inner peace of individuals, communities, and the world. His approach was holistic, recognizing that peace requires social justice, equality, and the care of the most vulnerable. For Pope Francis, the absence of war was only one element of peace. The true measure of peace was the eradication of poverty, inequality, and injustice. His vision was for a world in which every person, regardless of their background or status, could live with dignity, respect, and hope. A lasting legacy. Pope Francis leaves behind an extraordinary and irreplaceable legacy, not only for the Catholic Church but for all of humanity. His legacy is one of humility, compassion, and unwavering commitment to the poor, the marginalized, and the oppressed. He demonstrated in both words and actions that a life dedicated to God is not just about personal salvation, but about serving others, especially those who are most in need. He made it clear that faith is not merely an abstract concept or a set of rituals, but something that must be lived out daily through acts of love and justice. His life was a testament to the transformative power of love, not as a theoretical idea, but as an active force that can change the world. What makes Pope Francis's legacy so powerful is that it was not only found in his famous sermons or key decisions within the Church, but in the small, everyday actions that reflected his values. He lived the teachings of Christ in a way that was both profound and simple, through his kindness, his attentiveness to the needs of others, and his willingness to put the needs of the poor above his own comfort. Pope Francis led by example, and in doing so, he showed the world that true leadership is about service, not power. As we reflect on Pope Francis's life, we cannot help but feel a profound sense of gratitude for the example he set. He reminded us that a full life is not one lived for ourselves, but one lived in service to others. A life that glorifies God by serving those around us. His life was not just about the Church or about religious duties. It was about making the world a better place through compassion, humility, and action. Pope Francis taught us that the way to a fulfilled life is through selflessness, through helping those who cannot help themselves, and through recognizing the sacred dignity of every human being. Today, as we remember Pope Francis, we are reminded that his teachings and example will continue to guide us. His legacy is not something that will fade with time. Rather, it is a living legacy, one that continues to inspire us to live lives of service, justice, and love. The impact of his words, his actions, and his example will continue to reverberate in the hearts of those who knew him, and in the hearts of those who will learn of him in the years to come. His teachings will continue to shape our understanding of what it means to be human, to live with purpose, and to make the world a better place for all people. As we mourn his passing, we also give thanks for the indelible mark Pope Francis has left on our world. His leadership was not just a matter of guiding the faithful, but of showing all people, regardless of their religion or background, how to live with compassion and dignity. We honor his memory by carrying forward the values he championed: humility, service, peace, and love. In the midst of our sorrow, we find comfort in knowing that his legacy will endure through the work that continues in his name. Pope Francis will forever be remembered as a symbol of compassion, humility, and unwavering faith. As we reflect on his life, we feel a deep sense of loss, but also profound gratitude for all he accomplished. His teachings will continue to shape us, and we will carry them forward in our actions and our hearts. His passing leaves a void in the Church and in the world, but his life reminds us that the greatest gift we can offer is love. Love that is given freely without condition and that changes lives. May we live as he did, with compassion, humility, and an unwavering commitment to serve others.